This video is about defunding the public libraries, and the Republicans' war on reading goes nuclear. It's not surprising that the Republicans don't know how to read anyway, and they want to do away with everything that teaches us the truth, basically. Now, Republicans in Texas and Missouri are opening up a new front in the war on public education. Now, in a sign of how unhinged the Republican war on books has gotten, Texas conservatives have decided that fart jokes are pornography, which they're not. In a text message exchange between two book banning advocates in Texas, one wrote that it would be better to close the library than put the porn back into the kids section, which there is no porn in kids sections, dumbasses. Among the books that her group deems porn, Larry the Farting Leprechaun. My ass is so noisy, and Gary and the Goose and his gas on the loose. Other materials that conservatives in Texas determined were sexually explicit materials that were meant to arouse desires include, they called themselves the KKK, The Birth of an American Terrorist Group, by history writer Susan Campbell Bartoletti, and Tilly Walden's Eisner, award-winning graphic memoir about ice skating. Now, how is called spinning? Now, how is ice skating considered fucking porn? That's what I want to know. All this does is makes one wonder or want to learn more about the masturbatory habits of Texas Republicans, but sadly, the more pressing issue at hand is that this supposedly porn destination for these books is being used as a pretext by those who wish to shut down the library altogether. Now, for months, the nationwide frenzy of book banning that has infected the GOP has been inflicted with special vengeance on this small town, about an hour and a half's drive from Austin, Texas. It started when country officials on Llano, I'm not sure if I'm saying that all right, they jumped on the GOP book banning bandwagon, and it drew up a list of books to remove from the library. A librarian who refused to comply was fired, and many of the books were targeted for fart jokes. But many of the books that were targeted were fart joke books. But other targets included books that were anti-racist or pro-LGBTQ, as well as In the Night Kitchen by Marie Sendak, which is commonly targeted by the religious right because it has an innocent drawing of a kid naked. But local residents successfully sued, forcing the books back onto the shelves, where they were all immediately checked out so that people could read them. Now, all this reading simply cannot be tolerated by today's GOP because, they don't know how to read. On Thursday, the Llano County Commissioners have scheduled a special meeting to discuss shutting down the library entirely. But as Vice News reported, text messages entered as evidence in the case show that the vice chair of the Library Advisory Board from February 2nd indicated that closing the library system may have been the defendant's plan all along if the judge's decision doesn't go their way. Now, Republicans behind the book banning typically deny that they have a larger agenda against education or literacy. Instead, they claim that their goals are limited to keeping a small number of books out of people's hands. But there's a good reason to think that there's a much larger goal afoot here of stigmatizing the very idea of reading and education. In Florida, the restrictions on books are so severe that many teachers were forced to deny kids access to any books lest they run afoul of the censorship law. Now, the anti-reading mania is morphing into a campaign to defund libraries. Now, on Tuesday, the Republican-controlled state house in Missouri had passed a budget bill that completely defunds all libraries in the state. Now, again, the pretext invoked is the false claim that librarians are somehow grooming children with pornographic material, which they're not. And now, in reality, the books being targeted are, unsurprisingly, those with themes about self-acceptance, anti-racism, and gay rights. The truth is, the grooming accusation is a particularly brittle fig leaf, and it's not just because the books in question are clearly not pornographic, because they're not. The war on libraries is part of a larger GOP assault on the very concept of public provision of education in any type of form. Now, part of the reason is a larger right-wing skepticism of the concept of a common good. Back in 2019, for the New York Times anyway, journalist Monica Potts had wrote about how her small community of Van Buren County, Arkansas, had gone to war over the existence of the library. And this was before the current book banning craze, and so the anti-library forces in her community were more upfront about why they wanted the library gone, and because Republicans believed that it was a waste of taxpayers' money to provide that resource, which it's not. People go to the library to learn. That's what I do. In her interview with residents, Potts discovered a deep hostility among conservatives to the very idea of learning and education and the desire to keep people with educations out. Now, call me narrow-minded here, but I've never understood why a librarian needs a 4-year degree, one resident said. The people who didn't frequent the library argued that the community didn't really need it anymore anyway. Potts writes, after all, if you have internet, you can get whatever you want in a day. I'm not really. And one can immediately understand in the age of Trump how turning people away from books and towards the internet benefits the anti-democratic desires of the GOP. The book ranges in quality, of course, and they let enculturate them after all. But overall, there's a stronger chance of someone developing qualities of thoughtfulness and empathy if they actually read books. The internet has a lot of great stuff in it, but you're reading this article here, but it's also notoriously good at turning people's minds to mush. You're unlikely to join up with QAnon or become radicalized by incels at the library. But the internet, however, is very good at turning otherwise normal people into belligerent idiots who fucking bounce up and down on Trump's dick and they hate democracy. Now, as we've talked about before, the philosopher Umberto Eco was writing in the 1990s about how fascists have always cultivated a distrust of the intellectual world. And to the fascists, thinking is a form of emasculation. Rationality and science in this world will lead to depravity. The paper-thin porn pretext has always been about this larger hostility to the very concept of thinking, studying, and reading. Libraries are the latest battlefield, but the real white whale for the GOP is the destruction of public education. They want to dumb people down so they can be idiots like them. That's what they want to do. Now, this month offered another reminder of that when Republican Governor Greg Abbott and his sycophants in the Texas legislature had made a play to defund public libraries in the Lone Star State under the guise of school choice. As David Brockman of the Texas Observer wrote, the proposal to offer parents vouchers to remove kids from public school and enroll them in private school is about sucking so much money out of the public schools that they collapse. Now, but what's equally important here, he writes, is what Republicans wish to replace public education with. Now, schools that receive vouchers are not required to satisfy the same requirements public schools must meet. Basically, it's a scheme to replace real education with religious indoctrination, often without worrying about if kids are even gaining basic literacy and math skills, let alone critical thinking. The end goal of school choice politics is crushing the concept of critical thinking, and it tends to undermine the authoritarian grip on power. Now, taking this all together, the GOP's war on books and libraries, a picture emerges of what the Republican Party wants America to be: mindless, illiterate, and compliant, and being stupid, basically. So if you like the video, you can get the video, like, and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell, and so you can be notified when a new video comes out. And you can also go ahead and leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a video or a month, your donation can help go a long way. And thanks for listening.